Good afternoon, Pokésports, and welcome to another tier list video. In today's tier list, we're going to be looking at the Psychic type in Sword and Shield and see if they're competitively worth it or not. Now, Psychic is actually a very abundant type in Sword and Shield. It's also a very abundant type with legendaries and restricted mons, so we're going to see a lot of good Psychic types on this list. If you guys are excited, you know what to do. Hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and let's get on with the list. To start off, we got to look at our S tiers, folks. The top of the list, the top of the top, the cream of the crop, I think goes without saying. Introduced in this generation, both Calirexes, I'm going to go ahead and say, are S tier. Everyone knows that, right? Calyrex Ice, incredible Trick Room sweeper. Calyrex Shadow, incredible everything else sweeper. They both go, well, I guess in Trick Room, Calyrex Ice goes too fast, and regular Calyrex Shadow goes very fast, and they both hit like a truck. Their abilities are broken, berries don't work when they're on the field, and they get a +1 every time they KO something. So all you gotta do is bring them in as late game sweep, and that's game. Essentially, they're very difficult to deal with. You're pretty much forced to use a Zacian to deal with Calyrex Ice, and you're forced to use a Yveltal to deal with Calyrex Shadow, and Pokemon that require other Pokemon in order just to beat them are very good Pokemon. So I think that goes without saying to put those two in S tier. Now, bottom of the bottom, absolute garbage, pieces of trash, we have Unown. Unown is what it does. I'm including Unown on this list. I know it's not in Sword and Shield, and Hidden Power isn't even in Sword and Shield as a TM. But I'm including Unown because BDSP did come out, and, you know, Home is probably going to open up, so Unown is probably going to be transferable to Sword and Shield. Regardless, save yourself some time. You won't be needing it. Hidden Power is not that great of a move, especially when it's the only one you learned. So I wouldn't recommend using Unown at all. Kind of where I stand with that. Anyway, let's go on with the rest of the list. I do think, looking at this list, a solid B tier mon is going to be Mewtwo. Now, Mewtwo, in better situations, Mewtwo would be a better Pokemon. But in the current situation, when things like Calyrex Shadow exist, it is so hard for Mewtwo to exist in unison when Calyrex Shadow is so popular, because Mewtwo just doesn't hit as hard as Calyrex Shadow, isn't as fast as Calyrex Shadow, and on top of it all, loses to Calyrex Shadow because one Astral Barrage will knock you out pretty much every single day of the week. So that's something to consider. It's the unfortunate situation that we're in right now in the meta, but Mewtwo, I think if you can cover for everything that Calyrex Shadow could do to you, you can maybe do something. You definitely need Wide Guard. I had some success with Mewtwo in my past with Aerodactyl with Wide Guard and Tailwind, because you kind of put Mewtwo in a spot to where you can match the Calyrex well. And thankfully, all you have to do is really Shadow Ball, and it should be going down regardless. Rest of the list. What do we got? Solid A tier, I'd say Latias. Solid A tier is Latias. Latias saw a lot of play, does get access to Tailwind, does get access to, you know, Calm Mind and some other cool supportive moves. One of the fastest Tailwind users outside of Prankster as well, so it does have options in that sense. Same can be said about Latios, but Latios is just a little bit less tanky, so it defeats the purpose in that sense, but still does great. Still does great regardless. I think more S tiers, we can go ahead and include Solgaleo here. In fact, let's include all these here. Let's just get this out of the way. Like I said, we have a lot of psychic restricteds. Solgaleo, Necrozma, Duskmane, and Necrozma Duskwings are all very, very strong. So I think they all belong in the S tier because they all do what they need to do very well, and especially a lot better than the Pokemon that we've listed out so far. Now let's look at some more trash. I think D tier. D tier is a great place for, like, I don't even want to say Grumpig, because Grumpig I would argue is kind of an F. Okay, definite F tier is regular Calyrex, because the reason why I include regular Calyrex in F tier is because there's no reason to use it. You can make the argument that maybe regular Calyrex is better than a Grumpig. Okay, I would agree with you there. But what is the purpose of running regular Calyrex when you can run either one of these? Because regular Calyrex still takes up your restricted spot. And if you're going to take up your restricted spot and you're not using one of these, what are you doing? You're throwing. You're actually throwing. Kind of a similar situation with Necrozma, but I'm not ready to put Necrozma in that tier quite yet. What I am ready to do is put Celesteal, no, Cresselia in the A tier. Cresselia, the tankiest Trick Room setter pretty much in the game, unless you're including this and this. The tankiest non-restricted Trick Room setter in the game for the most part. Does get Trick Room up pretty much the majority of the time. Also does have access to Levitate, which is pretty cool. Has access to healing moves like Moonlight. Has access to Icy Wind for more speed control if you need it. Chimecho, I could definitely put an F tier. I think Chimecho, yeah, you can go ahead and sit next to Unown. I just finished doing the ground type tier list, and I didn't have a lot of F tiers in ground type. But I'm definitely finding some S tiers in psychic type. Bronzong, I will also say, is another A tier mon. It does kind of what Cresselia does, but differently because you're a steel type. I'll put that at the end. There you go. Sets up Trick Room. Does a very good job of it. Has a really good time next to Groudons. So I could see some reason to use it. Lugia, I'll put in C tier. Lugia has kind of a similar issue to Mewtwo, right? It's a psychic type in a Calyrex Shadow meta, which makes it a little bit difficult to use. It also it is very tanky, don't get me wrong. It's very tanky, but doesn't hit very hard. So yeah, you can get tanky and set up Trick Room, but they're just better Trick Room setters that don't take up a restricted spot like Cresselia, all right? With a lot less weaknesses, because these are essentially the same Pokemon, if we're going to be honest. The only difference is that this is Flying type and this has Levitate. Wobbuffet. I'll give Wobbuffet D. Don't get me wrong. I understand Wobbuffet's not great in doubles because all you have to do is ignore it and win the game, but at least you have Shadow Tag. All right, at the very least, you have Shadow Tag. So you do have options. It's not like you have no options. Where do we go from here? This gets a little complicated because a lot of these psychic types you haven't seen in a very long time, but doesn't necessarily mean they're bad. Claydol, I'll give D tier just because Claydol doesn't accomplish much. It's just another Trick Room setter. It's like the majority of these Pokemon are. You're going to see a lot of Trick Room setters in today's video because Trick Room is the psychic type move. So I think Claydol kind of belongs in D tier. You wouldn't really use it above anything else. Lunatone, Solrock, same situation. Like very little cases to use these two mons. Not that you can't. There's just very little reason to. Metagross, I'm gonna give a solid A. I do think Metagross can still be good in the meta if you wasted all of your restricted spots to use a Solgaleo. Metagross is a great second option, right? It's your budget Solgaleo. You can use it without wasting your restricted spot, and it essentially does a very similar, if not the same thing as Solgaleo. Zen mode, I'm gonna give you F tier. Ain't nobody on this planet actually runs Zen mode Unown Darmanitan, right? You guys don't run that, right? Please don't run it, because it doesn't make sense to give so many psychic type, or to give special attack to a Pokemon that has no special attacks. Makes no sense. Absolutely zero sense. Another D tier, I'll stick Girafarig here. I'm not sure what Girafarig does. Personally, I do know it gets Sap Zipper, which is kind of a unique move. I did actually have some success with Skill Swap and Sap Zipper to Skill Swap Sap Zipper onto a Mega Swampert back in like VGC 14. It's also the only Pokemon that gets Skill Swap and Sap Zipper. So if you wanted to do something with that, that's your only option. Gothitelle, I'm going to give an A. Gothitelle with Shadow Tag is so much better. It's everything that Wobbuffet wishes it was. Shadow Tag is such a broken ability, guys. Just to know that your opponent can't swap is such a good feeling and makes your decision makings and makes your turns so much easier. If you guys haven't used Gothitelle yet, I'd highly consider it. It's so good. Where do we stick the... I guess we'll do the whole Slowking, Slowbro line now. Where do we stick them? They're definitely not awful, but I think all of them kind of belong C tier. Arguably, these two do the same thing, and these two do the same thing. Can we get behind the same thought process here? I've really only seen these two set up Trick Room with the Follow Me user. A couple Follow Me users are on this list, but we'll get to them a little bit later on because I have an idea where to put them, but I'm not 100% sure yet. They all do the same thing, but they're all just Pokemon that do it better, right? If you want to set up Trick Room, don't use these. This one exists. This one exists. These two exist, right? Now, Tapu Lele is interesting. Tapu Lele doesn't see too much play, but I think it's very strong, and I think it's stronger than Mewtwo. So I'm going to put it in A tier. I think Tapu Lele definitely deserves to be in A tier because it does have access to second terrain, which is a very good, ability to have, and a very good terrain to have on the field because you avoid all priority moves if you're grounded. But on top of it, you also hit like a truck. Unfortunately, it didn't get access to Expanding Force, or else I would have just made that Pokemon absolutely busted. So I kind of get it. But this alongside this, terrifying. This alongside this, still pretty terrifying, right? So I think a very fair place to put it is A tier. Very fair. Very generous place. Deoxys. Do I have... Deoxys is interesting because it does have different forms. It does have different speeds. Unfortunately, I don't have too much experience with Deoxys. But as far as I know, it's pretty decent. It's not great. It's not broken. It's just kind of average. So we're sticking it in the average tier. The Lake Spirits, though. Lake Spirits are another average, right? They all do the same thing. They all set up Trick Room. This one's the tankiest. This one hits the hardest, especially. This one hits the hardest physically. There are some sets with Azelf, with Explosion, and with like setting up rocks and then, inting away into the enemy team. So I guess a C tier is kind of a nice place to put them in general. Oh, I missed an S tier here. Lunala definitely belongs in S tier, by the way, guys. Lunala definitely belongs in S tier. It does pretty much the same thing that Necrozma Dawn Wings does. But this also does have Power Beam, Meteor Beam, Power Herb, Meteor Beam. I guess this one arguably can do the exact same thing. But it's just a nice little strat that you can do. Moving on. There's so many Pokemon in this tier. In this list in general. I gotta look for some bees, man. I'm not finding any bees. I think... Okay, there's a bee right there. I do think that Galarian Articuno is better than Lugia. And it's also better than all the Slowbros and the Slowkings. And better than Lake Spirits. I think Galarian Articuno, you can set up Trick Room. You also have the option of having competitive. So in a meta that's full of Incins, full of Landorses, it's not actually that bad. There's also some pretty interesting strats you can do with like flinging a berry, raising its speed, giving it a weakness policy proc, and then having the opponent swap into their intimidators, and then you just got a bunch of special attack. So there's options. You don't see it too often, but there's options. Victini is very strong. I'm going to give Victini a nice B tier. It's one of the best Pokemon in singles, and also V creates a very strong move. Same goes with Oranguru. Oranguru is kind of the sleeper Trick Room, but what makes it a little bit better is the fact that it has access to Instruct. Instruct's such an interesting move. You can essentially Instruct Glacial Lance 2 times, or you can Instruct Max Steel Spike 2 times. Like you can have some pretty funky strats there, right? And it's not the same as like taking the move and using it again, except you're using the Oranguru stats. No, the Calyrex at +2 attack because you broke a weakness policy gets to attack twice is what that means. So if you can play with your speed well enough and put them both in a very nice speed tier for one another, you can make things happen. Now, who can forget Hatterene? Hatterene and Didi were very oppressive at the time of like Series 5, Series 6, Series 7 even. I think Hatterene is still good, especially when G-Max Hatterene is a thing. Hatterene is amazing. It's a great Trick Room setter, very strong Trick Room setter, very slow speed, so you can also use it as an abuser after you set it up. And its best friend Indeedee female is an S tier. I will say Indeedee female is an S tier. Indeedee female is everywhere. It appeared in every single season since the beginning of VGC in Sword and Shield. The reason for that is because it does what no other Pokemon can do. It sets up Psychic Terrain, has Helping Hand, it has Follow Me, Expanding Force even, and, you know, it doesn't matter what you're next to, but whatever you're next to is safe, because Indeedee can sit there, tank 2 or 3 hits, and, you know, be fine. It also has the normal typing, which makes it immune to Ghost, which is kind of nice as well. So in a metagame where Calyrex is a threat, Indeedee does actually strive to. There's also a point, and I'm pretty sure the point is still now, where Indeedee's used to carry Shadow Ball just because Calyrex used to not be able to do anything to Indeedee, and the Indeedee can OHKO with Shadow Ball, which is kind of hilarious. So I think S tier with Indeedee is 100% valid. Alakazam, I'll give a B tier to. Alakazam does get Magic Guard Life Orb, which means that you won't take damage from the Life Orb, which is kind of cool. But I mean, you really only want to use Sash on this, I think. The more that I'm looking at this list, I kind of want to rearrange this like this. I think Lugia, if I'm putting Alakazam here, I think I gotta put Lugia here. Because I don't think Lugia or Alakazam is necessarily better than Lugia. I think they do two very different things. They definitely do very different things. It's hard to compare them. Grumpig, I'll stick in D. There's not much that Grumpig does. Musharna, same thing. I'll stick in D. I'm not seeing Musharna do too much. I'm not seeing Xatu do too much. They don't do nothing, but there's no reason to use them above everything else on higher tiers. Starmie, I'll stick in C. Starmie is interesting because it has a very good move pool. It's a very interesting typing. Water. It's very fast. Not the fastest thing in the game, but it's fast enough to be decent. Mew, I'll go ahead and stick in the B tier as well. I think Mew and Mewtwo are very similar in that regard. Mew can learn every single move in the game. Unfortunately, we can't use it in VGC, but doesn't mean that it's bad. I think when looking at just the psychic types also, I'm going to stick Jirachi in A tier just because paraflinching Jirachi is disgusting in singles. And I think it's that's a good place for it. Indeedee male. Solid. Probably here. Probably not. No, A tier. I think A tier. The reason why I think A tier is because you have Imprisoned Trick Room as an option. You also do have Trick Room as an option. You have Expanding Force. You do a little bit more damage than the Indeedee female would with Expanding Force. So I think that's fine. I think that's a great place for it. You can stick Sash on it. Pretty much always have guaranteed 2 turns of an Imprisoned Trick Room to just prevent the opponent from going ahead and setting up Trick Room and then using their abusers to take you down. Jynx. Jynx is a C tier because Jynx does get Fake Out. Jynx is also very decently fast. Galarian, Mr. Mime. I'm giving it a B tier because it does have Screen Cleaner, and then I'm giving Mr. Rime the C tier. Because Mr. Rime is the same thing as Mr. Mime, but weaker because it doesn't get Eviolite, and and Galarian Mr. Mime can carry Eviolite, and is actually ironically still faster than Mr. Rime. It's like they purposely made this Pokemon useless by making this Pokemon exist. It's so unfortunate, but it's the truth. Meowstic female, I'll put there. Meowstic male, I'll put it up here. T-Wave Swagger plus Trick Room plus Fake Out isn't bad. I mean, it's unfortunate that this doesn't see more play because it's just not as tanky as other options, but it used to see play, and I could see reasons to run it. There was also a very interesting skill swap prankster onto... What was it? Shinotic, or a skill swap prankster onto Amoonguss, and then you have prankster spores, which was really fun that you can do with Meowstic. So you got some fun gimmicks. I do think it's better than pretty much these. Maybe not. Let's do this. Yeah, let's do that. I'm moving Latios up because do think Latios is better than the rest of this list. The way it's standing out right now. Exeggutor. I do kind of also think Mewtwo is better than the list, but Exeggutor I'm going to put in C tier. It can set up Trick Room, and it can also function with Chlorophyll, so you do have both options. You can set up Trick Room, or you can even set up a Torkoal and then just outspeed with Chlorophyll, so the options are there. The options are endless. Let's go ahead and stick the Celebi in a B tier. Celebi doesn't do too much. Even in singles, it doesn't do too much. But no one can deny that it's a very interesting typing. It's weak. 4 times weak to Bug, but Bug's not a very common type at all. So you don't really have to worry about that. Unfortunately, Galarian Rapidash is kind of not that great. Alolan Raichu is okay. It's better than these. It's a lot better than these. It's not incredible, but I have seen success with it, and there is some plays that you can make with the Pincurchin and with setting up the electric terrain and sweeping that way. But like I said before, it's not phenomenal. Let's see. Gardevoir. I'd say Gardevoir is a B also. Thing is, like, I feel like a lot of psychic types are kind of just average, right? I don't feel comfortable putting them in C tier because they're better than C tier, but it's a little difficult. Behemoth I will put in C tier. It's very strong, but it doesn't do a lot. Like, it's strong, but it's not as good as Reuniclus, which I will put in B tier. I feel like Reuniclus as a Trick Room sweeper is very good because it does also have Magic Guard. Hypno, that's a D tier for me. Gallade, I'll put into C tier. I wish Gallade was better. It's just simply not as good as Gardevoir because there aren't a lot of physical psychic type moves, and it's a physical psychic type. So you're very limited in that respect. Sigilyph, I'll put C. It does have access to Tailwind and does have access to what's the other thing it has access to? Gravity. It's one of the few Tailwind Gravity users in case you want to run a Gravity team. Mr. Mime. No, you can make things happen with Mr. Mime. No, let's be honest with ourselves. Mr. Mime belongs there. Orbeetle is not that great either. I think Orbeetle belongs in D. Necrozma. And Necrozma does kind of suffer from the same issue that Calyrex has. Like, what reason do you have to use Necrozma if you could just use one of these? It's kind of a waste of restricted spot. So I'm going to throw Necrozma F. I know that you can do things with Necrozma, guys. I know you can. For me personally, it's just that there's no point if those two exist, right? Like, what's the purpose? It's a waste of a restricted spot. Malamar I'll throw in B because what is it called? It's not controversy. It's the one that flips the stats backwards. That one. Yeah, that ability is really good, especially with superpower. You get to raise your attack and defense over and over. Medicham, solid C. It does have pure power, which is interesting and different. So it does make it a little bit better than these psychic types down here. And then Swoobat is very fast, and you can do something with Swoobats and with Fling Strats. So I think this list is alright the way it stands. This is definitely the most Pokemon we've had to do on the channel so far. So I'm very curious what your guys' opinions are here, because I'm not 100% on my list, but I do feel like for the most part, we hit most nails on the head. It's very difficult with psychic types because you got a lot of average and bad, but not a lot of top tiers. But I think we did a good job pointing out the very good ones for the most part. Anyway, I'm Kevin. This is Pokésports. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you already liked the video and subscribe, go ahead and do that. And I will see you guys again here tomorrow for another tier list. Peace out.